What's up everyone, Acid Glow here. So I'm back with another Predator lore video compilation. This video is 1 hour long with a bunch of topics covering the video game Predator Hunting Grounds. Over the past year, I covered this game regarding the storyline and how it connects to other stories. I'm going to leave timestamps in the video description and also the comments section. This way, you can skip to a topic you haven't seen yet. The purpose of these longer videos is to have multiple stories in one section. As I covered this franchise for a few years, some new subscribers may have missed some of the older videos, so check out the timestamps if you need to, and leave a like rating if you want to see more longer videos like this. What happened after the Predator movie in 2018? Was there a sequel, or did the story end there? If you haven't seen the movie, then here's a recap of the events. A single Predator who went rogue traveled to Earth while carrying some stolen technology, possibly from another or previous tribe. The item he had was of great importance to the other group who lost it, so they sent out a brand new Predator to hunt down the fugitive. Its ship was damaged while trying to escape from another Predator vessel. By using a wormhole, it escaped and crash-landed on Earth. He would interrupt a mission by a special American team, and only one survivor made it out. During their short battle, Quinn McKenna wounded the fugitive and took some of his technology. He had it shipped back home for safekeeping. Another task force named Project Stargazer, which focuses on acquiring live Yautja for research, does in fact find the body of the fugitive. His body is then taken back to be studied. Meanwhile, the assassin Predator, also known as the Hybrid or the Ultimate Predator, makes it to Earth and begins his search. He eliminates the traitor about halfway through the movie and continues his search for the stolen cargo. The Hybrid was created by taking the DNA of other strong life forms that they hunted. This gave the Hybrid incredible strength, agility, and technology that was grafted into its body. Its skin would form into an exoskeleton that acted as body armor. It showed to use a different type of vision mode for tracking prey. These abilities made it similar to a cyborg. A final battle occurs in the end, but the Hybrid is defeated, and the stolen cargo is revealed to be a new type of nanotechnology. It forms body armor, and it has enhanced weaponry. This is simply called the Predator Killer. So the movie ends, and what next? Well, part of the story is continued in the new video game Predator Hunting Grounds. While the game is mostly based off multiplayer at the time of this recording, it still does have some lore connected to the Predator movie in 2018. It says here that Stargazer was a former independent government contractor turned rogue international arms dealer. After the Stargazer incident in 2018, the entire program was shut down due to the massive security breach. OWLF reclaimed its place, while bitter ex-agents of Stargazer stole intel and technology gathered on Predators to form a black market arms manufacturer. The Stargazer group would hire elite private military contractors. They were to keep the guerrilla encampments functional and ready to respond in case there was a Predator sighting nearby. You would also come across various groups of contracted mercenaries in the jungle. These groups would generate chaos on behalf of Stargazer. Countries with hot climates and destroyed by war is the perfect hunting ground. Stargazer was intentionally cultivating a spot that would lure a predator. If we look back in the first Predator movie, a similar setting was seen. Various rebel and guerrilla groups were included. When they made contact with Dutch's team, a huge gunfight occurred, which led to that Predator hunting down the survivors, because they would make fine trophies for his collection. Now in Predator 2, the story took place in Los Angeles, a city full of heat and conflict. The vast amount of crime, gangs, and gun wars would create another type of jungle. It was filled with plenty of prey for a predator. The story of Predator 2 also included a top-secret program called the OWLF, which stood for Otherworldly Lifeforms Program. It was led by Agent Peter Keyes. He used the cover of being part of the DEA to fool the police force. His team had knowledge of the Predator that fought against Dutch in Central America. Most of the team was wiped out by the city hunter in the meat factory. Lieutenant Harrigan would defeat this predator only to find other hunters amongst him. They would later leave Earth in their ship, with Harrigan surviving the encounter. The program was shut down and replaced with Stargazer. They were given the task of hunting down predators up until 2018. Now, after the events in the Predator movie in 2018, Stargazer was shut down and replaced with the original OWLF team. This was the group from Predator 2. This is because Stargazer was not able to handle the situation, which led to a massive security breach. So what happened to Stargazer after this? Well, they turned into a black market arms manufacturer. While they were still interested in hunting down predators and studying their technology, they were no longer under the watchful eye of that government. After the Stargazer incident, numerous scientific discoveries were made. The team had recovered metal shards from the blast site or technology left behind. By combining raw iron ore with metal used in Predator armor and weaponry, they created Veritanium. While they could not duplicate the components of the Predator armor, they decided to merge them together, creating a hybrid material. What made Veritanium so unique was that it enhanced the strength in steel, like its formability, durability, tensile, and yield strength, all while avoiding its previous limitations. It wasn't long until other governments, agencies, and corporations were racing to get a hold of as much Veritanium as they could. According to Predator history and lore about their culture, it is forbidden for other species to claim the technology of the Yautja species. This is why all hunters are fitted with self-destruct devices to avoid capture or if they are unable to fight back. That's probably why these predators are in the game, hunting those who took their technology. So that covers what happened after the Predator movie in 2018. I didn't expect this new game to have a story tied into it, but it's a welcome addition to the lore of the Predator universe. What's up everyone? So we have some more lore on the Yautja species, but this time it's regarding the audio recordings found in Predator hunting grounds. My previous lore video around this game had me going over the main story of the game. While there is no actual story mode, the game did have a reason for the predators being in this jungle. The lore I covered in the other video tells us that the timeline of Predator hunting grounds takes place right after the last Predator movie in 2018. The audio recordings in the game give us more backstory. The voice you hear is from Special Agent Sean Keyes, the son of Agent Peter Keyes from the Predator 2 film. These audio recordings give us a lot of lore that answers a bunch of questions. For example, what happened to Dutch after Predator? I covered this topic in 2 previous videos, but now we have more information. Also, what happened to the gear and weapons the city hunter left behind in the movie Predator 2, like his shoulder cannon, biomask, combi stick, and wrist computer? We can finally get a clear picture of how the story unfolded with various characters. I'm going to read out each audio log. There's a lot to go over, so let's get started. This is Special Agent Sean Keyes, Regional Director of the Otherworldly Lifeform Task Force. The date is February 23, 1996. After accepting this position, the team felt it would be a good idea to start recording my general thoughts for prosperity. So few people have been exposed to the kind of things I'll be seeing. And to be honest, I'm not sure if that's exciting or terrifying. Regardless, now that I've been fully debriefed, I can get to work investigating this fascinating species. Director Peter Keyes, my father, was part of the OWLF in 1987, when first contact was made with the Predator by a team of highly trained Special Forces soldiers in South America. The Predator was disabled by the last surviving member of the team, triggering a powerful self-destruct mechanism. My father and his team interviewed the survivor extensively, while an OWLF survey team combed the blast area for any evidence. Besides some additional information on the species from the survivor, the team barely found anything to recover. It's been nearly 10 years since first contact, but I hold out hope that this is a sign of things to come. December 3rd, 1996. Things have been moving slowly. I knew this would be difficult. There's finding a needle in a haystack, and then there's finding a needle in 20 haystacks. I've spent most of my time sitting through hundreds of documents and countless data entries, trying to understand the predators, a name my father apparently gave them. After the OWLF made contact with the survivor of the Valverde encounter, Alan Schaefer, they received a wealth of knowledge that helped define how these creatures operate, luring and stalking prey, skinning them, and making trophies of their bones. These are the hallmarks of a sports hunter, not a simple carnivore. Furthermore, when Schaefer was completely disarmed, the predator removed its own weapons, suggesting a cultural system of honor. After this first encounter, things started to fall into place. Small details and past stories yielded more data in retrospect. From these notes, it looks like we've had multiple documented encounters over the past few years, but nothing that yielded more than stories and other anecdotal evidence. This part in the audio logs seems to match what you will find in the novel of Predator 2. The novels usually expand on smaller details that are left out in the film version. In one part of the story, the novel does say that Peter Keyes interviewed Dutch later on. February 12, 1997. The team here has spent the last few years working on countermeasures and other methods for hunting these hunters. If we can get the jump on one of these bastards and catch it alive, the world would change forever. It's strange that nothing has ever been recovered from a predator encounter. No body, limb, or even a finger has ever been found, although this isn't surprising. The predator is perfectly designed for covert hunting. We can't see it because it employs advanced light-bending technology that renders it effectively invisible. However, it can see us perfectly through active infrared scanning. We're betrayed by our own natural body heat. Fortunately, the infrared isn't too advanced. Dutch Schaefer was able to evade the predator's sight by covering himself in cool mud. This led the team to develop a bodysuit that similarly masks the wearer's infrared signature. We're still working on ways to counteract the cloaking system, but recent efforts have been encouraging. July 2nd, 1997. It's happening. We've gotten word that a crime scene in Los Angeles reportedly contains hanged, skinned bodies. LA is experiencing a record heat wave, which correlates with data suggesting ambient heat is a factor when predators choose their hunting grounds. I'm convinced we're experiencing a new encounter. The field team boarded a plane hours ago and should be on site before the end of the day. To maintain secrecy, my father and other OWLF agents are going undercover as DEA agents investigating drug trafficking in Los Angeles. Our intent is to capture the city hunter alive. With this goal in mind, we've outfitted the team with infrared suits, nitrogen-based freezing mechanisms, and a broad surveillance package to monitor as much of the city as we can. I shouldn't get my hopes up. This could still be some kind of run-of-the-mill homicidal maniac, but I wouldn't put money on it. Until our team receives confirmation, we're holding back to prep the lab for receiving. The next few days should be interesting. July 8, 1997. I just received positive confirmation from the LA team that there is an active predator, and its hunting ground is downtown Los Angeles. I still haven't fully processed that this is actually happening, but I need to, and fast. The surveillance team has been tracking its movements, developing a consistent pattern on how the alien hunts. The rest of the team has set up a trap at the slaughterhouse in the warehouse district where the predator has been feeding. A helpful bit of information that confirms the hunting is solely for sport and not nutrition. The plan is to deploy countermeasures, then covertly assault the predator using the heat-dampening suits. It's a risky gambit, but with such a limited timetable, we have to take any opportunity we can. I think it's best that we head to LA and establish a mobile lab so we can be ready the second the predator is captured. If this goes to plan, we'll be involved in one of the most momentous moments in human history. July 10th, 1997. It's been several days now since the LA encounter. The director of the OWLF, Peter Jacob Keyes, my father, was killed in the line of duty, attempting to capture the predator codenamed City Hunter. I was in Los Angeles that night, prepping the mobile lab for the capture, only to receive a panicked message from a survivor of the raid. The City Hunter was more prepared than we thought. It managed to kill most of the team inside the slaughterhouse, including my father. It's a dark day for the OWLF. We failed to give mankind proof we're not alone in the universe, while simultaneously letting a threat to our species slip through our grasp. But we have to move forward. While we did fail to capture the City Hunter, we collected an impressive amount of data on it, most significantly an account from Detective Lieutenant Michael Harrigan, who supposedly killed the City Hunter with one of its own weapons. In his statement, he reported that shortly after the City Hunter expired, a host of older aliens appeared. They spared Harrigan, allowing him to leave, taking the City Hunter's body with them. They launched their spaceship into the night sky. We retraced Harrigan's steps based on his testimony. While battling the City Hunter must have had its share of collateral damage. There was little evidence that could be differentiated from the normal gang violence found in Los Angeles. However, in a rather nondescript alley, we did find something that, while not worth the price we paid, will pave the way to making our sacrifices not in vain. It was blood. The undeniably extraterrestrial, bioluminescent green blood of the predator. This itself was a remarkable find, but at the end of the blood trail was the City Hunter's arm. I immediately ordered for the alley to be quarantined should someone wander into the find, but it was too late. Someone was already there. I tried to warn the stranger off with our cover story, but he just laughed from inside the shadows. I reached for my sidearm, but then the stranger lit a cigar. In the sudden bloom of light, I recognized the face of Major Alan Dutch Schaefer. He was older, thinner than the photos we had of him, but it was him. OWLF agents swarmed into the alley, but Dutch did not resist. Did he mean to get caught, or did his curiosity get the better of him? Hard to say. The last known whereabouts of Major Schaefer were in the OWLF custody, shortly after having been interviewed by my father, Special Agent Peter Keyes. This was shortly after the Valverde incident. The last time I heard of Dutch was when he vanished from OWLF custody, after my father had questioned him concerning the events in Valverde. But here he was, in the same place as another predator attack. In the debriefing, he tells me everything, how he was good friends with my father, and how he had been unofficially let go to help hunt down and find these creatures. They have secretly been keeping tabs with each other over the years, sharing discoveries and leads to different predator encounters in attempts to stop this threat. After seeing the signs, he too showed up in LA to help track down this City Hunter, but limited resources kept him from getting here in time to do anything. The part where it says Dutch vanished from OWLF custody somewhat matches the novel of Predator 2. After Peter Keyes interviewed Dutch about the jungle hunter in Valverde, the novel says Dutch remained in the hospital to recover, but he broke out and disappeared. Peter Keyes was sure Dutch would return someday. Now we learned that Dutch was just hiding and secretly working with Peter Keyes to hunt down more predators. July 11th, 1997. Dutch has been surprisingly helpful to our efforts. He knew my father and was sympathetic about his death. He's offered to help us in exchange for funding a team. Dutch would be our on-site agent for any alien incursion. When he says he knows them, knows how they hunt, I believe him. If Dutch could start bringing back bodies, technology, or even just first-hand accounts, we could make huge advancements. Before he left, Dutch brought out what I had seen briefly in the alley, a collapsible spear. The same one the City Hunter used against Harrigan. He wanted to keep it as his down payment. While advanced, the spear was relatively rudimentary. I was reluctant to let it go, but it seemed like a good faith investment, though I doubt I could have stopped him anyway. The good news is that Dutch gave us a fully functioning alien helmet. Easily the better part of the bargain. Besides, the wealth of knowledge the helmet and arm would bring us would alone change the course of history. My father's passing has been difficult, but everything was finally coming together. It seems now that both Dutch and I are in this together, which makes for a strange kind of closure. September 21st, 1997. My father's associate and close friend, Agent Adam Garber, has been chosen to head up the OWLF operations, but has chosen me to help him directly with research and operational efforts. We managed to secure a massive extension to our funding after we presented the helmet and severed Predator arm. After discussing it with Garber, I convinced him to keep Dutch and his crew off the record as much as possible. Dutch can do so much more working alongside us than he ever could working for us officially. Appropriated funds for Dutch and his team have been marked as cleaning services. Studying the arm has revealed so much about Predator physiology, and we are just now scratching the surface of what this helmet can do. There's also a damaged computer still attached to the wrist, which must have been destroyed by whatever severed the arm. It will be a slow process deconstructing, analyzing, and reverse engineering the alien technology. But every discovery will be monumental as we learn more and more from a species so much more advanced than our own. December 1st, 1997. We ran extensive genetic tests on the arm, the results of which could lead to huge medical breakthroughs. It also gives us clues to the atmospheric makeup of their homeworld and how viable it would be to sustain human life, should we ever find a way to get there. Judging by the elasticity of the skin, we're thinking the city hunter was a juvenile of the species. This would line up with Detective Harrigan's account of the LA encounter. With that in mind, one could theorize that its hunt may have been an initiation into adulthood. Carbon dating of the bone structure puts the city hunter's age at a minimum of 300 years, which draws into question the lifespan of a predator. If our assumptions are correct, we could be talking upwards to 1,000 years, possibly more. The mask is likely a mundane utilitarian item to the predator, but the technology involved is staggering. Aside from the respirator functions, the visor built into the mask is capable of displaying multiple visual frequencies. This explains how the city hunter found and killed the OWLF team in the slaughterhouse. We assumed they only had access to infrared, but we were clearly wrong. What still confuses me is how with such extraordinary technology, the predators express a seemingly tribal culture. They have such a strong focus on honor, trophies, and worthy opponents, things we left behind as our own species has developed. Is it possible that these technological advances were not developed by the predator species, but instead taken from another? So that ends the first part of this video. We got to cover events from the first and second Predator movie. We now have a much more clear understanding of what happened to Dutch, and who found the technology left behind by the city hunter in the second movie. Welcome back everyone. So this is part 2 of the lore within Predator Hunting Grounds. If you saw the previous video, we went over the first 10 audio logs that are collectible in the game, each one giving us a backstory after the events of the first Predator movie and leading into Predator 2. Now, with Dutch returning to the story, he teams up with Sean Keyes to unravel the mystery of the hunters we know as Predators. This video will cover the audio logs from number 11 to number 20. If you want to hear the story from number 1 through number 10, then check out the previous video. So let's continue and find out what happens to Dutch from here. March 12th, 1998. We've had our first strong lead since the LA encounter. At 2 a.m., a special forces group in Cambodia went MIA. The OWLF was alerted about the missing soldiers when skinned bodies are flagged in an update to military intelligence. We dispatched Dutch and his crew to the location within hours. Our research suggests that the Predator hunting grounds are active for roughly a week. Then we assume they return to their homeworld. What's worrying is that our rate of detection seems to be escalating. They could be sending more predators. This is exciting, but also worrying. If the number of predator events is increasing, we will inevitably cross a threshold where there are too many to handle. Dutch's team is highly effective at dealing with the menace as it is now. But unless we develop an advantage, humanity is not prepared to face a predator invasion. March 19th, 1999. Dutch's team managed to secure an intact piece of the predator weaponry. They tracked and killed the predator while somehow snagging its shoulder cannon before a group of elders showed up for the body, exactly as it happened in LA. The elders either did not know or did not care that Dutch stole the gun, but goddamn, I'm glad we managed to keep it. I had the team running preliminary tests on composition and rudimentary functionality. I'd like to get those nailed down before anyone even thinks about attempting to fire it. Based on how Dutch describes it, there was an unnatural connection between the weapon and the predator itself, which could imply advanced biometric controls. Alternatively, there could be a more direct connection with its mask. So many possibilities, but only time and rigorous testing will tell. What's of paramount importance is that we don't blow ourselves up along the way. It's April 4th, 2001. While I've had basic training, I usually stay away from field duty. However, it seemed prudent to have first-hand knowledge of the predators. As Dutch continues to prove himself an expert tracker, I was guaranteed a sighting if I went on the next mission. I opted out of arming myself, as previous accounts describe predators sparring the unarmed. Killing a defenseless target must be seen as dishonorable. After infiltration, we quickly walked into a guerrilla ambush. At this particular moment, I regretted my decision to go unarmed, but I kept my head down while Dutch and his team did their work. After the dust settled, we heard a deafening roar. In the clearing stood a massive predator. It had no mask, staring Dutch down in complete silence. After what seemed like minutes, it let out another roar and charged us. As it was closing in, the predator threw a knife that missed Dutch, but grazed my arm. Unfazed, Dutch grabbed a spear from his back and thrust it into the predator's chest. The spear must have missed any vital organs, as the predator continued to fight Dutch before escaping into the jungle. Minutes later, we felt the ground rumble as a spacecraft lifted into the air and then left the planet entirely. While I paid for it in physical trauma, I'm glad to have seen it in person. I can't say I'm disappointed in what I saw. October 27th, 2004. We have officially secured a predator's body. Granted, it's pretty shot up, but it will give us a wealth of information on their biology. I considered asking Dutch's team to look into less damaging methods of subduing the predator, but decided against it. Still, Dutch and his team somehow achieved body exfiltration before it was intercepted or destroyed. While examinations of the body are ongoing, we're running parallel tests on the plasma caster weapon. No attempts at firing it have been made, as we are still trying to figure out if it's functional. My hope is that we can obtain more of these weapons for comparison, which would hopefully lead to replicating the technology. Having the weapon of our enemy would dramatically increase our odds in an all-out conflict. July 8, 2007. Today is the 10th anniversary of my father's death in Los Angeles. Because of his contributions to the OWLF, the very building I'm sitting in was named in his honor. Nothing stood in the way of his drive, passion, and desire to learn the secrets of the universe. With everything we've accomplished since his death, I'd like to think he'd be proud. The best way to honor him now is to make sure his legacy lives on. Our team will continue to make history in the name of Peter Keyes. March 10th, 2008. The team is pretty shaken. On our last mission, Dutch's crew was killed. We dispatched his team to a hunting ground near a small village, but the entire village was empty. Investigating the scene revealed a fresh human skull and spine impaled and dangling on a predator spear at the center of the village. That's when all hell broke loose. The team could not find a target, as one by one they were picked off. Dutch got the survivors into cover and offered himself up as a challenge. As he drew his own spear, within seconds he stood face to face with a very unique predator. He described its armor as far more ornate, almost Egyptian in its regal design. Physically, it was slimmer, but far more deadly than any previously encountered predator. Based on the description, I'm confident that what he encountered was the female of the species. Our assumption has been that all known predators have been male, though up until now it was mostly an informed guess. Dutch was ambushed, pinned to a wall by the female's net launcher. He observed the predator walk toward him, then activate her shoulder cannon, which quickly shot every member of his team with astonishing precision. As the razor netting cut into his face, blood ran into his eyes, so Dutch barely saw the predator cloak and disappear into the jungle. Given the heavy casualties and Dutch's severe injuries, it's unlikely we'll be sending teams out for some time. I fear we've kicked the hornet's nest, and now the queen is pissed. November 17th, 2008. For some time now, the medical team has been experimenting with technology devised from the Predator medical kit, clearly predicting injury on their hunts. Predators carry a small host of advanced medical devices. While it is configured for predator physiology, the foundational technology is surprisingly universal, though nowhere near ready for human testing until some time later. Dutch returned from a hunting ground with severe injuries after a confrontation with the predator female. The consensus was that he would not survive. With Dutch's consent, we used a host of experimental options to stabilize his condition, including a serum containing predator blood cells augmented with human DNA. One of the factors that contributes to the predator's long lifespan is their ability to regenerate tissue. Our hope was that this could be altered to identify human tissue as its own and repair it accordingly. So far, the serum has accelerated the expected time of recovery. Considering Dutch's age, he should have healed his wounds in a year, but this occurred in under 3 months. He'll remain in quarantine until the side effects of the serum can be identified. Given how severe his injuries were, it's a small price to pay, though at some point we'll need to discuss sterilization with Major Schaefer. If this affects his DNA, we cannot risk that change disseminating into the gene pool. Now this part is really interesting because it brings up the idea of using predator blood samples on humans. We've seen this done before in other stories. For example, in the video game Predator Concrete Jungle, Hunter Borgia survived his infant years when he was exposed to predator blood. The blood would allow him to increase his lifespan and stay young. He would later augment himself genetically, turning him into a human-predator hybrid. A similar idea was used in the comic book Aliens vs. Predator Eternal. The villain of this story would use predator blood to keep him alive much longer than normal. He also hunted predators for their blood and technology. It's May 24th, 2010, and things have been alarmingly calm, which is making me nervous. A short time after Dutch's brush with death, we had an energy surge that only affected the predator equipment. We have no idea what caused the surge, and I can't tell if it damaged anything, but it was definitely some sort of localized anomaly. Granted, we've collected quite the assortment of predator tech, but the possibility of losing even a few pieces is terrifying. I worry this has something to do with the emergence of the predator female. Are they preparing for something? I doubt they've decided to leave Earth alone. Either way, we're in a holding pattern until the next encounter. But with this predator drought, we may be out of luck. March 3rd, 2015. With predator encounters dwindling, our funding has been adjusted accordingly. I know the other intelligence branches have been eager to get our section closed, as they're not privy to what exactly we're doing. They know we're in research and development, but we have not produced any weaponry or technology that's ready for deployment, which was a major incentive for getting the OWLF established. As far as they know, we're just a bunch of UFO lunatics chasing conspiracy theories. The technology we've recovered would suffice, but There is so much more to what we do than just harvesting weapons for conventional warfare. Regardless, it seems we'll have to bite the bullet and do what we need to defend humanity against the predator threat. If we throw the government some of our lesser breakthroughs, maybe that will keep the wolf from the door. Either way, we'll need a live specimen to make further significant strides. It seems that every encounter with Dutch leads to a dead predator and broken gear, and that's only if another band of predators does not show up to take the body. Long story short, something needs to start happening, or the OWLF may have to shutter. Final entry, August 29th, 2016. It's official. They're abolishing the OWLF. In my opinion, it was a certain central agency that stuck the final knife in our back. But that's not relevant anymore. A group of private contractors pitched a task force to replace us, and it was approved. Because we blazed a trail of discovery, they were able to swoop in and overpromise without putting in any legwork. Because of their prior weapon development experience and the guarantee of a live predator within 1 year, they were swiftly green-lit. Many of our other agents, myself included, were given jobs on this new Project Stargazer. Since this is no longer the OWLF, I suppose I don't need to record these anymore. It's not like anyone will hear them. The research department is being cataloged and classified as storage. Still, I just wanted to say, I'm sorry, Dad. I tried to keep it going. I really did. I tried to find a way to keep this from happening to anyone else, but it was too much. Project Stargazer is not what you built, but I will make sure I bring your mission with me. Fortunately, Dutch was able to stay out of our official works, but I'm sure I'll be hearing from him soon. And that's it. This is where the lore in Predator Hunting Grounds comes to an end, for now. If they do release future content that expands even more, then I will cover it. So these 20 audio recordings tell the story of what happened after Predator and Predator 2, then connecting to the Predator in 2018. It's pretty cool how they brought back Dutch in this way. We all wanted him to come back in the second movie, but it never happened. So this at least is something, and it was a nice way of including him into the story instead of a small cameo appearance. He hunted predators, but lost to the female predator. We can only wonder where the story goes from here. What will happen to Dutch if he's using predator blood samples to recover his injuries? Will this affect him in the future? We have yet to see. The story did make good connections between these three movies, so I gotta say, I did enjoy reading through these. What's up everyone, Acid Glow here. So the latest update to Predator Hunting Grounds is out, and with it came some audio tapes of Dutch from the 1987 movie Predator. These were voiced by Arnold Schwarzenegger. It tells the story of what Dutch has been doing after his mission in Valverde, which resulted in his entire team getting wiped out. These new tapes about Dutch are unlocked by your rank. The 20 OWLF tapes in the game were recorded by Sean Keyes, and it outlines other events in the story, which leads up to Predator Hunting Grounds. So let's go through these new tapes and see what we can learn. It's September 12th, 1987. My name is Major Alan Schaefer, also known as Dutch, U.S. Army veteran, Special Ops Commander, and the only survivor of the Valverde incident. These tapes are my personal testimony. Insurance, should anything happen to me, what I found won't be lost. My team was brought in to rescue a Guatemalan cabinet minister and his aide who had been captured by guerrilla forces in Valverde. We located their downed helicopter, and the skinned bodies of those on board hung in nearby trees, seemingly at the hands of the guerrilla fighters. After assaulting their camp, it became clear that the mission was a setup. American intelligence had sent us to retrieve the captured agents who had been on recon for a future military action, but none of that matters anymore. Because while we were clearing out the guerrillas, something was hunting us. An invisible killer tracked us. As we made our way to the extraction point, in 24 hours, it wiped out my entire team. Rick Hawkins, Blaine Cooper, Mac Elliott, Billy Soule, Jorge Ramirez, and Al Dillon. The best soldiers I've ever known, men I trusted my life, were butchered like animals. It was a nightmare. We walked in with guns, but It had the perfect camouflage, advanced weaponry, and could see heat. It was strong and smart. A pitiless hunter. I waited, I watched, and when I understood it, when I saw how it hunted, I killed it. As it lay dying, in a final FU, it activated an explosion device. I barely escaped the blast. My radiation sickness and the crater of that explosion are the only evidence it was ever here. I've given my official statement to Agent Peter Keyes of the OWLF, but it's become clear I need to investigate Valverde myself. Keyes was thorough, but he asked all the wrong questions. We have proof of alien life, but that life sees us as game. It's an alien whose first contact with humanity was to hunt us for sport. All Keyes cared about was the technology lost in that explosion. He can't see the jungle for the trees. I see the threat. He sees the opportunity. Spies are all the same. I mean, we are not people to them. We're just assets. How many soldiers will he feed to those monsters? Just for a chance to steal from them or to learn from them. The government can't be trusted. So I'll have to do this on my own. I'm cutting treatment short and going off the grid. I will make my way back to South America, to Valverde. I was told there were stories about demons who make trophies of man. I'd like to hear those stories. April 8th, 1991. I'm not dead yet. I'll admit, I regret not curing my radiation sickness before I left. It made leaving the country difficult. I cashed in a few favors, took one too many off-the-books flights in rusted-out buckets, but I made it back to Valverde. The area was in lockdown, sealed by American intelligence for study. The complex centered on the crater from the aliens' self-destruction. I found a scientist slumming in a local bar. A few drinks and a couple of threats later, he was ready to talk. It wasn't much, barely anything I didn't already know. The blast emitted a form of radiation they'd never seen before. Some believed it was extraterrestrial, some didn't. Either they're not that bright or there's nothing to find. I decided to let them keep searching in vain. It kept them busy and off my trail. I've been touring villages and small towns, using the cover of an author writing about South America folklore. I don't know if any of them bought it, but they took my money and told their stories. The closer they were to the jungle, the more stories of devils in the trees. Some were BS, made up on the spot, but some carried consistencies that I couldn't ignore. Whatever it was, the demons who make trophies of men, the devil of the trees, or the skull taker. The stories always began on the hottest summer that they could remember. In the summer of 1987, Valverde nearly broke its all-time high in temperatures. They love the heat. It must remind them of home. Everything else confirmed the truth of the stories. Proud warriors skinned and hanged, skulls and spines ripped from their bodies. Maybe it was obvious from the beginning, but it wasn't until I heard the stories that I truly accepted the purpose of these mutilations. I mean, they're taking trophies. They travel impossible distances to hunt us, skin us, and mount us over some alien fireplace on another world. It would be disgusting if it weren't so familiar. Where do I go now? It's been on my mind all year. The takeaway from all of this intel is that they've been doing this for decades, centuries maybe. They're coming back, and I need to be there when they do. June 27th, 1992. It's hard to remember that the most important part of an operation is patience. You can plan the perfect op, but you can't account for everything. If things go south, there's nothing to do but to adapt and finish the mission. Sometimes you just get lucky. I was on a dock about 10 clicks downriver from the Valverde border, figuring out my next move. I was ready to pack it in. I mean, I thought I'd learned everything I could, that there was nothing left for me to find. The OWLF had abandoned the detonation site a year ago, and I thought they'd already shipped back to America. That's when I saw Agent Peter Keyes tie a skiff to the dock. I mean, I hadn't seen Keyes since I gave him any official statement. It was impossible, but there he was, with 3 of his buddies, all agents. I mean, the clean, tidy outfits gave them away all the time. I mean, they won't get down in the dirt. You see, that's what they pay soldiers to do. Keyes walked up, looked right at me, and shook my hand. With the radiation sickness, I'd lost a lot of weight. I thought maybe he hadn't recognized me, but then he greeted me like we were old pals. Keys is a good spy, saying nothing, implying everything. We spent the next few hours trading war stories at the bar. If you'd heard us, you'd never suspect we were trading intel on an alien manhunter. His cover was that they'd been looking for a serial killer, a sadist, who'd been operating in the area for years, hunting people like animals and then skinning them alive. Keys wanted to talk about the monster, so it all came out in the cover story. In many ways, they were just a few steps behind, surveying villages for information, locating witnesses. He did confirm one thing I'd only considered. He told me about how the killer chose his victims. They were always armed, a rifle, a pistol, a knife in the boot. He wasn't taking kids or random villagers. He wanted a challenge. Whatever it was a hunter. When it killed for sport. I wish they were here for a military action. Recon for an invasion, but the truth was so much worse. We are prey, animals, fit only to be hunted. Keys and his buddies paid their tab and mine, but before he left, he winked at me and said, "Stay out of the jungle. That's where he gets you." I tracked Keys and his team for weeks, but they didn't learn anything new. Maybe they knew I was there, maybe they didn't. I don't know. I've risked enough for now. I think it's time to disappear. Keep my ear to the ground. Be patient. March 3rd, 1996, Zaire. I thought I could wait. I thought I could hold back and make my move at the right time. I couldn't. Damn, I had to find them. I needed to hunt it or let it hunt me. I joined up with any private military company that was headed into a hot zone. I pulled every string, cashed out every favor, just to follow the sweat and the death that attracted the demon. I eventually put together a team myself, lost soldiers and haunted men, willing to fight and die wherever I led them. They thought I was a legend, and I let them believe that. I'm quiet and good at what I do. I needed them to see me as a legend so I could take them to die in the sweltering jungle. We went on more missions than I can remember. We didn't fire until we were fired at. They thought that it was my code. It wasn't. I was waiting and watching. Our last mission was an evac op in the Congo. A private munitions base had gone dark. When we arrived, they'd been dead for days, bodies strung up on floodlights around the base, all of them skinned, some missing skulls and spines. We secured the site and waited for backup to arrive. In the heat of the day, I stared into the waves of heat coming off the concrete, thinking that any minute they might come alive as the invisible killer, and then they did. I didn't wait. I unloaded every round I had. Trusting me, my team fired in the same direction. It wasn't the first time I'd done it, but this time I knew what I was looking for. It was so fast we couldn't hit it. We panicked, and stray rounds struck a crate of RPGs, and that explosion hit other munitions that exploded. By the time the smoke had cleared, the demon was dead, but so were all my men. I took samples of its blood, pieces of its anatomy, and what tech I could salvage, and then I burned everything. Then I disappeared. I never checked in with HQ. As far as I know, I was counted among the dead. October 12, 1997, Los Angeles. I needed to come back to the States. It wasn't impossible to sneak contraband through customs, but I wasn't willing to risk what I'd found in the Congo falling into the wrong hands. Instead, I traveled to Mexico aboard a cargo ship bound for the port of Altamira. From there, I made my way to Tijuana and I bunkered down. I had tangible proof of extraterrestrial life in my possession, but no idea what to do with it. I'm not a scientist. I did a soldier's duty and secured valuable intel. This was out of my pay grade. I kept an eye on the news. Los Angeles was having a record-breaking heat wave and a gang war on the streets. It was perfect. I could feel it in my bones. I've been tracking them for so long, I could think like them. I could smell the prey. I could see the hunting ground. I had to get to LA. Crossing back into the States from Tijuana wasn't that difficult, but by the time I'd reached the city, it was already over, like Valverde. The OWLF only found crumbs. What I'd hoped might be the aliens' ship turned out to be only a launching site. I wanted it too much, and I got slappy. I breached the OWLF quarantine and was captured. I'd hoped to be bailed out by Agent Keys, but he died. With Keys gone, the OWLF was leaderless and disorganized. I was interrogated but then negotiated my release by bartering the alien materials I recovered in the Congo. During negotiations, it was clear how little they knew. They needed someone who understood the threat, so I offered to work with the OWLF as a consulting advisor. They had the funding and the technology I needed to continue my hunt. I wouldn't work for them, but I would work with them. They'll be a weapon I can use to hunt down these predators as they move to fresh ground. It's only a matter of time until they see us as a real threat. When the prey can fight back, it's no longer a hunt, it's a war. March 3rd, 2008. We've gotten good at killing predators. Every time we find one, we come back with more tech, more research, and the OWLF's funding goes up. Together, we've gotten stronger and more efficient. For a time, the aliens were surprisingly predictable. They had no idea that we knew so much about them, but that began to change. They sent better hunters every time. They're beginning to see us as a threat, or we've become a more worthy prize. Maybe both. We know this because our last encounter was special. We weren't certain if they had any gender to speak of, but that changed when we came into contact with a female. She was smarter and deadlier. She didn't mess around like the males did. She was direct, ruthless, and skilled. I was in Laos when he first came into contact with her. It was Valverde all over again. Her ambush wiped out my entire team. Only this time, she got me. In a small village, I lost track of her, just long enough for her to pin me with a razor net. Pinned against the wall, razors cutting into my face. I had been fighting for so long, I was ready to die. I should be dead. Instead of making the kill, she cloaked and vanished into the jungle. The net relaxed, and I escaped with my life, and a scar to remember her by. She spared me, only me, like she knew who I was. I returned to the exfil, my first failed mission in a long time. Are we going about this wrong? I mean, we've learned so much, but in doing so, have we made ourselves a bigger target? I can't stop thinking about something Napoleon said. You must not fight too often with one enemy, or you will teach him all your art of war. I started this believing we were learning how to hunt them, or maybe she let me live to just be hunted another day. We were teaching them how to hunt us. January 13th, 2019. I knew the Predator's deployments to Earth would make it impossible to keep all of this a secret. Sooner or later, there would be another player on the board. I'd hoped that it would be another agency, one that understood and respected the threat. Project Stargazer. Our initial intelligence on Stargazer was that they were capable, funded, but inexperienced. But they were smart. They took the OWLF's funding and got it shut down. Everyone we could identify in their group was a disavowed member of another agency, including the OWLF. Lacking strong leadership and a clear directive, they were sloppy and arrogant. They were aware of the Predator threat, and while they had many of the pieces, they struggled to see the bigger picture. Stargazer was so far behind that we didn't see them as a threat until the event in Mexico. The recovered Predator escape pod was an extraordinary find for Stargazer, but the death toll was a heavy price to pay for taking a Predator captive. My task force has many directives, but one of the most primary is that we do not take captives. Retrieve technology, corpses, and other intelligence. But there is no value in a live Predator, only liability. The enemy does not want peace. The enemy does not negotiate. Its only drive on Earth is to hunt. What we might learn from a captive Predator would never be worth the risk to our people. Stargazer did not learn from their mistakes, and the technology they recovered has only made them cocky. When the government cut ties to the agency, it should have shuttered their project permanently, but they only shifted their goals. Guerrilla factions and private military companies are being contracted by Stargazer to set up bases and equipment in locations we've identified as ideal hunting grounds. We believe that the former intelligence project is setting itself up to be a fully independent dealer of other worldly arms. This is a worst-case scenario. Hostile forces will use these weapons on their enemies, and they will use them on us. All the while, the true enemy stalks us unseen. It's a distraction mankind cannot afford. Stargazer will have to be dealt with. April 2025. It's hard to believe that I'm still recording this. I probably shouldn't be smoking in the med bay, but screw it. It's my birthday, for Christ's sake. I turned 78 today, but I'm out there hunting. I should be retired. I should be doing anything but this. My life shouldn't be possible. But the very thing that I hunt, that hunts me, is what's keeping me alive. As we began to understand the predator's technology, we started to use it. A fight with a predator female went bad, and I was critically wounded, dying. I agreed to experimentation. Using their medical technology was painful at first, but it worked. It worked so well that the cells in my body stopped aging. Pushing 80 now, I'm fighting like a man in his 40s. It's not the only experiment that I've been part of. I'm deadlier now than I was in Valverde. The OWLF has been fully reinstated. It's grown larger than ever before. We saved Sean Keyes from Stargazer. His father was Peter Keyes. I suppose you could say he was a very dear acquaintance. His son is a gifted scientist. I worry about the future. The Earth is seeing an unprecedented rise in heat and war. As the climate changes and the temperature goes up, more and more countries become hunting grounds. We've killed so many of their kind, but they only send more. The number of events that we've witnessed has increased threefold in 10 years. We have made an impression on them, but not like we'd hoped. We wanted to show them that we were not prey, to deter them from ever sending another hunter to our world. We sent a warning. They took it as a challenge. I fear we have made things worse. If the predators ever decide we've grown too bold, I have no doubt that they could burn the earth and all of humanity with it. My only hope is that, while they waste time on sport, we can rise up together and stand against them as a species. Until then, we keep moving, we keep hunting, and we keep our eyes open. And that's the full story of Alan Dutch Schaefer. It finally comes full circle. Now we have closure to the character that finally made a return. If you look at the pictures of the character in game, I noticed he has a knife, which is taken from the predator's wrist blade, along with a wrist computer on his left arm and also a biomask on his right shoulder. The story also seems to match events that were expanded upon within the novel of Predator 2, like Dutch getting interviewed by Peter Keyes, then getting sick, then escaping from the hospital, and then finally disappearing. So that's a pretty cool way to bring Dutch back. I liked the story and I'm glad he stayed alive in the end. But since he's got predator blood samples in his body, he might live longer than a human. What's up everyone, Acid Glow here. With the recent update to Predator Hunting Grounds, there's also been some footage of a new Predator class. As of right now, it seems to be a prize from an online contest. Hopefully, the Alpha Predator will be available to everyone else in the future. There's a possibility that the game will get more maps, skins, and weapons. This design of the Alpha Predator is similar to the one from NECA, but they both took inspiration of the original concept for the Predator in the first movie, until it was changed by Stan Winston, so it's a nod towards a piece of history. This upcoming Predator class has a unique weapon that acts like the War Club. It has the same animation, but it's just a different model. But the interesting thing about this character is the information about the weapon. It says this: once wielded by the legendary Alpha Predator, this sickle was used in the uprising of the Hish against their cruel Amengi rulers thousands of years ago. It seems that this bit of lore was linked to the action figure by NECA to commemorate over 100 different Predator figures by NECA. They took the original design of the Predator and made it into a figure. But not only that, they also wrote up a story for this character. Here's the rest of it. The ancient Yautja ancestors, known as the Hish or the Hish, were invaded by a race of insectoids. They were called the Amengi. This took place thousands of years ago on a planet far from Earth. The Amengi had exhausted the resources on their own world, This was due to them pursuing technological ambitions. They were a ruthless, nomadic civilization. As they traveled to many worlds, they would consume anything like a swarm, and then ruling what was left. During the early days of the Hish they appeared more animal-like and smaller in size, very different from their predator descendants that we know today. As they lacked the necessary strength and intelligence to withstand such an attack, the Amengi would overtake their world and enslave the Hish for centuries. When the Amengi invaded the planet of the Hish, darkness spread over the land. Their moment of peace was gone. The Hish were enslaved by the cruel rulers, the Amengi. Everything changed from here. The Hish were used for slave labor, food, experiments, and also for game hunting. During some fighting competitions, some combatants became so well known that wagers were placed on the matches. Gambling became an obsession amongst the upper tier of the Amengi society, and so larger species of the Hish were sought out. But to make the competitions more exciting, the Hish were chemically enhanced and trained, and turned into effective tools for their owners. As time passed by, the Amengi would rule over the Hish for countless years, but amongst the Hish, one of the largest and most fierce would emerge. Once it reached maturity, he commanded respect and fear from those around him, even from the Amengi. I'm not sure about the pronunciation of his name, but it's either Ka'el or Ka'il. His name's true meaning is rage. Not only was this beast physically impressive, but it was also unusually intelligent. He appeared loyal to the Amengi and used their trust to secretly pursue his own goals. His plan was to free his people from slavery. Gradually, he would ally himself with other powerful slaves throughout the established territories. While the Amengi grew rich and arrogant, they were unaware of the insurrection Ka'el was forming. Because nobody challenged the Amengi during their rule, their armies grew soft and weak. A bloody insurrection occurred at the right time, and the Amengi forces were usurped. Even though the Amengi had advanced technology and tough exoskeletons, their defense had failed them. The mighty warriors they created from the Hish is what overthrew them. Ka'el would take a trophy from one of the larger carcasses, and the others would follow him. All that training, all the slavery, the hatred, and the chemical enhancements would create the predator species. The remaining Amengi would be hunted down, forced into slavery, or eliminated. The technology left behind by the Amengi would be taken by the predators. Over the many years afterwards, this would form a balanced union between the scientific and the natural aspects of the Hish and Yautja culture. This would go down in the history of the Hish to honor the noble tale of Ka'el. He is forever known as the first hunter, or the alpha predator. This was not the very first time the Hish were mentioned. It actually was brought up in the book Predator Forever Midnight, written by John Shirley and released in 2006. But this was when the predators were changed in many ways. For one, they were now called the Hish, which translates to the people who take territory. They had a different honor code in this story. They would attack women and young children, even if they were unarmed. Their attacks were extremely aggressive and overpowering, leaving no room for a fair fight. Any beings that survived would become slaves. They would still take trophies, but knowing their methods, it doesn't seem like it was a well-earned trophy. The people the Hish would attack would barely have any chance to fight back. Another difference here is that as a species, they were now able to change their gender. This change could happen instantly if there was a desire to mate. The clan leader would be the most intelligent of them all, while the other members were portrayed as not so bright. This led to infighting amongst their clans. The medical kit in the movies and games would come with a needle that injected fluid. It was believed to give them a dose of adrenaline, hormones, or even heavy steroids. This makes predators get a boost of power for a short time. But in this novel, it was all produced by an evolutionary organ called the kill gland. It produced strong hormones that drove the predators into a frenzy, and it had to be kept under control with the use of medicine. Instead of relying on their own technological advances, they would scavenge anything they find from other worlds they conquered. This was similar to what the Amengi would do, dating back to the early history of the Hish creatures. Because of these many changes this novel made to the predators, it was not accepted by a lot of fans. The name Hish was also seen in Mortal Kombat X. It was one of the 3 variations you could use for the predator. So that covers some lore about the predators. We got to look at their origins, where they got their advanced technology, the history of the Hish, the story of the alpha predator, and the novel Predator Forever Midnight. Within the lore of the Predator universe, there have been many types of hunters in different stories. We have the traditional hunters that follow the code of honor, which are the most common. During a time long ago, there was a story of how the tribes became separated, all from the actions of Nightstorm Predator. This created the Bad Bloods, honorless hunters that hunt other predators. There's also the Enforcer Predators. They hunt down the Bad Bloods in return, both of them which made an appearance in the comic books. So there's more to this species than what is shown on film. But with new characters appearing in Predator hunting grounds, we can now look at a few more additions to the lore. This gives us a chance to look into other types of hunters, specifically the Samurai Predator and the Viking Predator. Before we start, make sure you leave a like rating on the video. With that being said, let's begin. The Samurai Predator went to hunt in Japan during days when it was particularly hot. The samurai warriors heard his spaceship arrive and interpreted it as a bad omen before heading off to fight him. In the distance, the samurai warriors heard the echoes of its attacks and attempted to fight this invisible demon. As they fought with courage, honor, and using all of their skill, all of them would fail. Even the most elite warriors would never return home alive. This ritual went on for centuries until the modern day. It was seen as a demon from legend that once hunted skilled warriors who protected feudal Japan. As time passed by, this hunter became a Japanese legend known only as the demon from the sky. The lore about this predator is explained in this way. This class of predator comes from an ancient Japanese legend that brings to life the tale of this demon from the sky. During the hottest of days, when the sun bit the necks of farmers of this island nation, a rushing sound, unlike any other, echoed across the sky. The samurai warriors would recognize this omen and don their weaponry to fight the invisible demon. Year after year, the most elite of warriors would fall honorably to this Yautja in a ritual that would last for centuries. Many would challenge the demon, but just like all the others, each of them would fail, for this predator was an experienced hunter, and its defeat would not come easily. If we look at the biomask, the design resembles an unmasked predator. This is a very unique feature, as other biomasks that we've seen before don't really show their own physical features. Its dreadlocks are also something we can look at. They are tied back and held upward, similar to the predator known as Topknot from the comic books. Now, the word Topknot is based on the concept of a Japanese hairstyle. Its most noticeable weapon of choice is a katana blade. This retractable, single-edged sword was used in many hunts throughout ancient Earth. The long blade produces heavy two-handed attacks against prey, and it causes temporary bleeding. The Viking predator can be traced back to when the Viking raiders consumed lands far from their own borders, and by doing so managed to draw attention they never imagined. The death and destruction throughout the world would bring a gift from the sky to challenge the most powerful and honorable warriors in battle. As the legends of this Yautja spread, Norsemen saw an opportunity to gain an honorable death by way of this wanderer, so they continued to pursue glory. Over centuries, the strongest, bravest warriors would journey out raiding to lure this great force into ritual combat. with hopes of feasting in the halls of Valhalla. It is a massive predator that rivals even the berserker class. It is stronger but slower than the berserker. This makes them a ferocious adversary. Rather than using additional gear, they lean more on their own abilities as a show of strength. One weapon that it does carry throughout its hunts is the battle axe. Wielded by the Viking predator of the north, this powerful two-handed battle axe was forged for devastating close-range attacks against ferocious Norsemen. The secondary attack provides a heavy overhead swing with increased damage to any prey it finds. Few would ever look upon this blade without it cleaving their skull. There was also an elder predator added to the game, but the lore description was very short. Years of hunting experience has granted this Yautja the title of Elder. This class upholds honorable hunting traditions passed down through the centuries. The armor type is the same as the 1987 Jungle Hunter skin, but with slight changes to the color, attachments, and the dent in the helmet being removed. So that covers the lore around the Samurai Predator, Viking Predator, and the Elder Predator. These are available in the video game Predator Hunting Grounds. I think the Samurai Predator was one of the most requested types within the community. I've read a lot of comments from the fans, and this is one Predator they wanted to see. There's been a few figures of the Samurai Predator, one from the Hot Toys Company and another from Prime 1 Studios. The Viking Predator was actually a surprise. I didn't expect it, but it's a cool idea. But what do you think about the lore around these characters in the game? Do you think it was sufficient, or should they have added a longer story? Tell me in the comment section. If you want to see another lore video around the Predator franchise, I'm going to leave links to a few more. I covered a lot of different topics in the past, so there might be something else you haven't seen. One that I would recommend is the video I did about Dutch's return to the franchise. I go over all the lore in Predator Hunting Grounds, and it's all about Dutch. It explains what happened to him after the first movie. I also covered the story about Dutch's brother from the comic books. It's a fairly long story, but it's good. But if you want to know about the origins of the Predator species, along with how they got their technology, you should check out the lore video I did about the Alpha Predator. It goes into detail about how they started and the early days of their people. And the last one I can recommend is one about the Drugathi alien creatures. It is the only alien life form that the Predators actually fear. If you made it this far into the video, we have reached the end. To see more content like this, just subscribe to my channel and turn on notifications. You can also follow me on Twitter and Instagram. Sometimes I post other stuff on there. Thanks for watching. My name is Carlos or Acid Glow, and I'll see you in the next video.